Hi friends, I'm Olga Koelsch and welcome to my studio. Soon there will be Valentine's Day and I prepared for you 10 very different, very interesting ideas for watercolor Valentine's cards. Everything will be very easy, everything will be very different, so let's just start. For painting Valentine cards, I will use all my palettes. I will grab my favorite pinks and reds from it, and for the card itself, I will use these Fabriano postcards. They are pretty fun because that's already a card. You paint here and send it right away. For a waffle heart, I will draw a heart, just this piece. And to make it easier, I will map out these diagonal ribs, how usually these waffles are divided. It will help us a little bit in the process. For background, I use very diluted, super diluted raw sienna, and I start to cover each and every part with very soft, spontaneous moves. What's important, I always leave white paper between the grid parts, and I try to apply it relatively uneven. So sometimes I apply a little bit more pressure on the brush, sometimes I apply less pressure on the brush. This is just the background, so we are pretty spontaneous here. It's important that you move your brush in one direction. For example, in my case, I go like this. So don't paint round, don't paint different directions. You will see in a moment why. Also very important to remember about those divisions between waffle sections, how you say it, leave white paper in between. Just like this. And now, while everything is still wet, I grab raw sienna right from the palette. It's very bold, you could see on the tip of the brush, and I add a drop of color in each and every top corner, just like this. And then I try to soften it a little bit, of course. It depends a little bit on your paper and amount of water. Sometimes color could distribute very organically by itself. Sometimes it requires small little help from our side. What's important, it should be always the same corner. If you choose, for example, as me, the top corner, then it would be always the darker one, because that's how we create the depth inside the waffle. It should not be super even, it should not be very artistic. It's very important that you have your dark corner on one direction. And now I grab burnt sienna. Burnt sienna is great color for all baking products, for painting all the baking products. It has this very organic, beautiful baking shade, very tasty, yummy. And I apply burnt sienna in the same corner, and maybe a little bit along the ribs, but always in one corner. If you step aside and look at your painting, you will notice at this moment that's the depth which we created in our waffle heart. Just about this, don't forget don't leave untouched. The corner ones are not that important, just add them some attention, some moment, and it always helps to dry your brush, and with almost dry brush go and soften some tough rough areas. It already looks pretty yummy, crispy. Usually waffles, they have a little bit of dough around. That's what we are going to paint now. I will use raw sienna, and with tip of my brush and very wiggling moves, I will create some uneven outline. Sometimes you could make it thicker or smaller. Don't overthink it. It's just a dough. About this. At some point you could add a little bit of burnt sienna, of the darker color. And now I use burnt sienna, rather bold, and I go with the tip of the brush, outline the heart. Even when you create outlines, avoid being too precise. The line should be very spontaneous, should be very vivid, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes some gaps in between, and that creates this pleasant watercolor idea. Wash your brush. Maybe you would like to soften few moments or distribute color just a little bit. Not so much, not so less. Now let's circle back to the heart. It feels like a little bit too much of white space now. Make sure that everything is dry by the moment, and cover few white gaps. Still in the same direction, you slide your brush in the same direction. And anyway, you keep in mind these parts, this structure of your waffle. Now grab, as a last touch, grab a little bit of burnt sienna and go along the rib. But again, it's very important, not with one single line. Try to vary the boldness of the color. It's just a little bit to emphasize, to add the crispiness and to divide these waffles, what's they call, grids. So, check it. It's a little bit too over-baked here, so I could soften this part slightly. And once you remove the pencil marks, you will see how lovely and tasty it looks like. Few more final details. This is it. Next card will be a toast with a gem. Very romantic, very romantic. I just very softly outline, drawing my future toast. I will use raw sienna, very diluted, and with big brush, very watery, I'm covering. In principle, I could cover all the area of the toast. The heart will be darker, so it doesn't matter that we already painted underneath this heart. And as bread structure, always uneven, with a little bit bolder color, with the tip of the brush, you could add a little bit of texture. Very soft, very gentle. It shouldn't look like chicken pox or something. And now dry your brush with a paper towel and take a nice portion of burnt sienna and go along the edges. I'll show you from this side. You go along the edges of your toast and let watercolor spread by itself. The paper is half dry, and that's very good. That's what we need. You should be a little bit quick with this painting because the sense, the effect will be in that moment, while the paper, the light part, is still wet. You see, for example, here it's getting a little bit too crispy, but that's okay. And the top part could be a little bit more crispy, and I apply a little bit more pressure on the tip of my brush. It's bigger, bolder, and I even grab a little bit from my palette, just the bold mix, to build up the top of the toast. So now have a look. If you feel, for example, it could be a little bit crispier, a little bit more baked, add details. Now the paper is almost dry, so if you would like to add more outline, go with the tip of the brush, but try to avoid long lines when you paint outlines. You could apply some pressure, make some dots, release the pressure, maybe emphasize a little bit corners, but that's already good. Then check the paper before we start painting hard. The paper should be completely dry. For the gem part, it will be, for example, strawberry gem. The best would be Meadow Lake Deep or Quinacridone Rose. So any magenta looking reds. I prepared rather nice bold mix. What we have to think about, that gems, they have glossy texture. Even maybe it sounds funny, but we think about gem not as a food but as a texture, and that has a glossy texture. Glossy texture have light areas which we have to emphasize. So we are leaving some light areas like this. And I wash my brush. I want to proceed a little bit softer, watery, and I soften this outline sometimes. Don't stress too much. It's just a gem, marmalade. And to create this texture, we left a little bit of white areas. They shouldn't be too big. For example, I would like to reduce a little bit white areas here, here. And as a nice touch, to add the feeling of jam dripping, soaking into bread, I wash my brush. My brush is wet, and with my wet brush, I just go along one of the sides and soften the edge, so that creates this soft bleed from one side. Of course, you could do it from both sides, from all sides, but to my taste, it looks more natural, organic when marmalade jam is dripping just from one area. You could even go a little bit far away from this jam and add this pinky touch to the area around, and maybe add, difficult to stop, add some few sprinkles and some unevenness on the other side, so it will look more natural. For glitter heart, we start with the tip of the brush with very, very diluted metallic dip, and you see I fill in the heart shape with very chaotic brush strokes. One moment they all very loose, light, very, very, very light. When we paint glitter, no matter in which color, we always go from super light to dark points. When you look at some glitter dress cards, you will see, you realize that this shiny effect creates by high contrast between small glitter particles. Now I dry this spot and I go with another layer which is a little bit more bold, but the same principle. Sometimes it was not super dry yet. Okay, I will go here. Sometimes I cover white areas, sometimes I'm overlapping with the previous layer. It's important that you move your wrist and your brush without big overthinking. It should be pretty chaotical. Once you feel like you start to to paint, to move your hand in some sequence, in some order, so change it. Your hand should be very, very free and kind of unpredictable, even to yourself. It could be small brush strokes, bigger brush strokes, just dots, small little details always work very, very fine. Try to leave a little bit of white areas. This will be very important, most light parts. Now let's dry this out. Third layer, it's very bold. I use my paint right from the palette, maybe with a small drop of water, and I go with the same idea over all the previous layers. I try to be very chaotic and leave some white areas and cover some dark areas. So very unpredictable in a way. And once I see that my mix is getting too light, I just go directly to the palette and use this super bold mix. Usually 3 layers are enough to show the glittery effect, but you of course could try maybe with 4 or even 5 layers. Very important that each layer should be dry before applying. So now we have a glitter heart, and to add some little bit more of fun to the project, you could add some glitter sparkles around. Also nice if you do it with different shades of pink. I use pink. I say pink, it could be any pink or red from your palette, or blue. I suggest that you stick to one color, so don't try to put 3-4 different colors, paints into this small little lovely shiny heart. For the next card, spoiler alert, yes, it will be a flower. So I would like to paint something like Peony with 6 strokes, almost with the tip of the brush. I have permanent magenta, could be any Valentine related color. So I create very simple, very loose peony texture, and the more I paint inside, the more loose and diluted it is. You will soon see why. And to make it more loose and diluted, wash your brush and remove the excess water with a paper towel. You could even go on the top of your previous brush strokes with clean and dry brush and lift up a little bit of 2 bright colors. Then with the tip of the brush and with the bold color, you could add some strokes around, but not so much, and then create a nice bud connected to a stem. I think I will make it monochrome, so I will just paint some curvy stem, and then I let it all dry. Once it all dry, with the tip of the brush, you could firstly draw it. I set up a small but lovely heart in the middle of the flower. I think the smaller the cutest it will look, so don't overdo it. In the same color as I used for the petals, small cute little detail which will bring Valentine mood. And after that you could add maybe a few more petals, a few more layers. But in this case, I would like to leave this area untouched, so the heart will be very crispy without bleedings. Maybe here. Leaves, actually I think not necessary in this case. Next idea is a sweet, lovely branch of a tree. Could be a cherry tree, for example, decorated with hearts. To paint this, I hold my brush in about middle, and I apply a pressure on my brush. A little bit more pressure, a little bit less pressure. Very gentle, and you could add a little bit more of different branches, but leave a lot of white area around, because that will be space for our main heroes, hearts. So this is just a preparation, very loose, don't overthink it. And now let's paint hearts. I use red, Windsor red, and you could use your favorite shades of Valentine's colors. And now let's have some fun, and instead of painting greenery and flowers, let's decorate the tree with hearts. Nothing special. Usually I just draw an outline, remove excess colors, and with the tip of my brush I distribute the color within the heart. And to vary thickness, you could just grab a little bit more bold color from your palette. Some hearts could be placed, could be sitting on the branch, and some of them could hang on the tree. It looks lovely when hearts have different size and shades of the same color. Of course, you could decorate your tree with all kind of pink, for example. Also could be very, very lovely. Let's hang this one. It's in a way it's super meditative technique, very, very pleasant, very relaxing, and I think you just could enjoy this process as much as I do. It's relatively important to keep hearts straight, like if you imagine a thread, so they are not moving in different directions, etc., etc. Small hearts, bigger hearts, could vary the shape. Some of them more roundish, some of them more long, etc., etc. A big field for imagination is here. And to add some special touch, we could add a little bit of just brush strokes, which will imitate small leaves, and they create a little bit of volume and a little bit of difference and make our branch even more vivid and lovely. For example, it's a little bit too thick here. Why not to place some lovely heart right in the middle, just like this, and add small little cute details. It's a little bit like decorating a Christmas tree, but with hearts, and just very, very fun way to create a very lovely Valentine card. last one for me. Check it out. It might be that you would like to add more and more and more details, but I think we're good for now. For painting kisses, I would suggest you to make a pre-drawing. First we draw a small line, then M letter, and then depending on whether the mouth is open or not, you leave a little bit of space here, and of course you could modify the lips as much as you like. For example, you could make another mouth shape, half open mouth, for example, like biting on a lip in a way. So let's paint it. Usually lips, they're glossy and bright, at least for Valentine's card, so we will paint it in a little bit of fashion illustration style. First outlines, then wash your brush, remove excess water with a towel, and then soften the area in between, so leave it relatively white. And now you see the volume, so that's we created volume. And if you person who likes makeup, it's basically we do makeup here just with watercolor. So we do outlines. You could create any shape. Maybe you tend to paint more illustrative or more realistic, so that will depend. That will be different for you. Then leave some white, just white paper. It adds this juiciness to the lips. And usually bottom lip is darker than the upper lip, because some shade comes from the upper lip to the bottom lip. It's small little details. And the second lip, we could do some fun. And for example, paint it in some fun way. For example, like this. We just fill in the shape of the lip with some chaotic, not chaotic, very organized ornament. It will a little bit imitate the texture of our skin on the lips on one hand. On the other hand, it will be more like, hello, that's a fun story. So if you're interested more in fashion illustration, also let me know in comments. We can do that more. Next one will be a lock in the shape of the heart. I would suggest to prepare a small drawing. Again, heart, nothing too special. And this handle of the locker, usually it has a thick part here. I would suggest that our key hole will be also in the shape of the heart. The more hearts, the better. And our locker will have a thick, usually all the lockers, they are heavy and thick, and that's what we will show here. So I will prepare a little bit of double area. Now let's start to paint. I will take Windsor Red, relatively bold mix. I will start with the tip of the brush, go along the inner heart, and as all metals, the metal surface is rather glossy, so I will, here and there, I will leave a little bit of white paper to emphasize this glossiness. I try to work quick while my paint, this area is wet, but if you see that it gets dry, it's nothing wrong with it. You just keep doing, and in this case it's so-called spontaneous cards, spontaneous watercolor. All the bleeds, all the details are very welcome. Leave a little bit of whites, also quite spontaneous, quite organic. If it is easier for you, you could just paint over the red part, because the lock hole will be dark, so we could easily paint over. So just like this, nothing super complicated. For the thickness part, I will take the same red color but a little bit bolder, and when I paint the bottom part, I will purposefully leave white rib between the details. I slide my brush with 1/3 of the tip just to create this dark bottom area. It would be also fun to add some texture, set up few vertical lines, just a small part, no need to do it through all the lacquer, and then proceed maybe a little bit more and leave the white area between these two details, upper and the side, just like this. Looks like I could add a little bit of thickness to the left, so it's now you could correct. Now comes the fun part. While it's all dries, I will need any of my black colors. Let's see what it's green. And it happens that I don't have black color. I will use a drop of neutral tint, very diluted. I go with the tip of my brush. Here and there in the middle I leave some white paper, because it's supposed to be a silver handle. Leave spontaneously some white areas around. Same with this thick part. Now grab very bold mix, maybe remove excess color here, and go with the tip of the brush carefully along the bottom part. And let your watercolor spread. Emphasize this connected part a little bit. Don't overdo it. Add maybe just few drops of darker color on the top. This is it. Wash your brush, remove the excess water, distribute a little bit this bold color carefully. You could play a little bit with what you have, maybe add a few more lines. Usually metal reflects colors, and if you explore it, you will see it's very so you will see a lot of lines like this, for example, of different thickness. So now we have the handle, and now let's create the logo. You could paint it just in black or mix your black color with a hint of our red to make it more interesting. Nothing to worry about. Maybe leave few drops of white areas, and that should be a relatively bold mix. This look. So this is basically ready. You could add a little bit of shades with the same mix, only if you like to, because it's always a nice ability to stop at the right moment. And we have our locker. Now let's paint a gemstone, red gemstone, ruby maybe, in some silver or white, gold surrounding. I'm preparing a draft. I will start with the red part. Just water. I'm watering the inner part. I would like the gemstone be with a smooth surface without let's say very polished, so I allow my watercolor distribute smoothly around, and I always leave white areas. Then I work very quick with middle and tip of my brush to distribute color and connect all these red details, spots. Always nice to make the bottom a little bit darker, bolder. Same with the outlines. Now I switch to black, neutral tint. In my case, any black will work. Should be relatively diluted. And with the tip of the brush, I move relatively chaotic around, and I leave a lot of white areas in between that will create this shiny metal feeling. If you here and there touch the heart and the colors start to bleed, that's all fine, because red gemstone will reflect on the metal, and everything will look
super natural, organic. For painting more realistic gemstones, it takes a little bit more time, and I could make some tutorial on jewelry gemstones maybe one day. Just wink me in the comments what you would like, what your main interests are. So here I purposefully grab a little bit of red color to my gray mix, but not overdoing it. I don't think about any special ornament. I just create some white spaces. I create some outlines, grayish with white spaces. Really lovely. Now it looks more like a lace, but we would like to have this metal idea. So I grab same black neutral tint, a bit bolder, and with the tip of the brush I add small random dots here and there. Sometimes I overlap, I place them on the white area. Sometimes I place them on the grayish area. Always nice to remember that gemstone creates shade. So this border, it's a little bit darker. Don't overdo it with dark color, otherwise it will lose this crispy jewelry feeling. Painting jewelry is such a big fun, and if we go for more detailed versions, it's very satisfying process. So almost here, almost done. Upper part should be a little bit lighter than the bottom because of the shading. Now, if you like, only if you like, because we can stop just right here, you could set small little gems in around the this metal construction. You do it just with the tip of your brush, very soft. Don't fill in the whole area. Just with the tip of the brush, I leave a lot of white space. Now it looks really rich and expensive, super festive. Few flat red strokes, and we are ready to warm up and to have fun. Let's create some heart composition. If that would help, you could draw hearts in advance, just to help a little bit. So I see this one, a little bit striped heart. It's just Windsor red, and now with my brush I will add drops of burnt cyanides. I dry my brush and I soften some of the areas, make it a little bit funnier, if you paint the same thing just on a bigger scale, that would be also something to just also would be nice for a card. Now, what I could, I will take phthalo green, super bright green color. And now I will map out my next heart very quickly. It's nice when you have different shapes. Next would be a flower. Let's start from the middle of the flower. Usually this part is round, where all the stamens are, pollinaries. So I painted just with red. It's Windsor red. You could use any red, any pink color. Just creating this fluffy texture of inner flower. Now I wash my brush and I want to create some lovely pink texture. I use orange and red in very diluted way. Got this. So it would be warm pink, warm coral, super diluted. And now I start to create petals. I paint sometimes with the tip of the brush, sometimes with the belly of the brush. More pressure, less pressure. So something round elements of a petal. And I connect it to the heart middle, and I try to drag out the red color from the middle to the petal. Let's repeat. Let's give it some room and overlap. It's not any certain flower which I have in mind. That could be, I think, mostly likely a cherry blossom, for example. But it also could be daisies, maybe pansies. The idea that you drag out a little bit of red into a petal, remove excess colors. Now another petal. Now it's more handy to start from the petal bottom and drag out the red color right away. Try to vary brush strokes and keep in mind that usually the middle of the petal has a thick vein, and you could leave this area rather white to just remind about it. Usually I recommend you to count the petals, because certain flowers have a certain amount of petals. But now we're painting something very spontaneous. No idea, no idea about the flower type. Right now it doesn't matter. So amount of petals could be up to your process. More pressure, less pressure. So I always move my wrist and I move my brush. Tip of my brush, belly of my brush, tip of my brush, belly of my brush, and leave the middle rather white and try to drag out the red color. If it is already dry, just get a little bit of red and imitate that it went organically. So apparently the last one could be just underneath the previous ones. Always try to paint a slight curves. And don't overthink it. This is very, very lovely. I would like to emphasize the middle. I grab my red color right from the palette. It's super bold, and I go just around the heart shape, a little bit outlining it, emphasizing, and here and there it starts to bleed, which is great. You could add a few details, few accents, and of course you could go and further and add further more details to the petals and experiment with this, but I think that's enough for a lovely card. Actually, as a last touch, I would like to add a little bit of greenery, something very spring, olive green, just small brush strokes. Don't really paint leaves, mostly brush strokes. This fresh green, it works very lovely with this gentle pink. And just like this, everything is very light, very spontaneous. Just follow your hand. For the balloon heart, I prepared permanent magenta color. It could be any color. I just want to show you different shades of pink, if you don't get mad on that color. But of course it could be reds or blue, greens. So with the tip of the brush, I draw a heart. I try to make a nice outline. Of course, it's always welcome just to draw the heart, but I think heart shapes are pretty okay to deal with. Now I wash my brush. I remove excess paper with a paper towel a little bit, and then I go inside my heart very quickly, not allowing to let this paint outline dry out, and I soften the edge only inside, so my color goes just inside. If the paper gets dry, it's okay. You could apply a little bit pressure on the tip of your brush, and it's still possible to soften this border. I wash my brush again. I fill in now just with the water. I fill the middle of the heart. If it feels not enough, for example, this part is a little bit too whitey, with the tip of your brush you could go again along this, along some areas, and add more of color. And now I'm thinking of creating a balloon. So what I would like to do is to get small color touch in the middle part of this heart. You could leave it, for example, like it is. It's also beautiful and very simple ideas for painting hearts. I would like to cover just the middle with very soft brush strokes. I try to avoid sharp borders. And now I will paint this small gummy part of the balloon. And for example, with burnt sienna, with the tip of the brush, I could add a thread. that's it.
Thank you so much for painting with me. I'm wondering which card was your favorite and what would you like to paint next? See you next time. Bye bye.